Guess who's back in the house? Heels click clacking about. Woo, okay. Somebody's feeling festive. If I'm being honest with you, no, I'm not. I'm not feeling festive. Ugh, I hate this time of year. Um, but I don't want to hate it. Much like me not wanting to hate my birthday anymore, even though I've spent majority of my life hating it. I want to switch the narrative. I want to change the narrative around for myself because I don't want to have any periods in my life that I am dreading, right? Like that I'm preemptively dreading because I just know it's going to suck. Like, how do I know that it's going to suck? You know what I mean? Like, I am the captain of my own ship here. You know what I mean? If it's going to suck, it's because I made it suck, you know? And I've said suck too many times, and it's too early in the show to be, going down that road. So I will turn this ship around. Um, but yeah, I want to change my relationship with the festive season, but it is a bit hard, because this is usually the time of year where everybody goes back and connects with their family. If there is family, or this is also another time where you are reminded of the people that you've lost, right? That maybe, just your normal day to day life, you are so busy and so consumed with just the hustle and bustle of it all, right? And you're caught up in the rat race that it kind of gives you a brief moment of reprieve from the grief that comes from losing someone close to you. And then the festive season comes around, and you are immediately brought back to memories of them, right? Time that you spent together around this time, maybe you got them a gift early in the year. And now, you're reminded of that gift and how you weren't able to give it to them, and you weren't able to express your love and appreciation for them and all of that. And it just brings up a lot, right? Or if you have no one to share this time with at all, and it's just you by yourself and you're surrounded by all these people who are happy and merry and, living their best lives. And this is where you feel the most alone, that there's no one who's happy and merry and enjoying your company, right? That it's just you and no one else, right? You think, should you even bother to, cook yourself a whole, Christmas feast? Like, what's the point in all of this, really? Um, yeah. And I think for many people, even if you do have family to go home to, right, it can still be really tough because family dynamics aren't always that fantastic, right? And even though you've done a lot of self work and you feel like you've healed from a lot of things, you find yourself going back home and you're just re triggered all over again. You fall back into these old roles, right? And you suddenly become this, you know, meek little girl now, or you've gotten a handle on your anger and you're not, this explosive person anymore. But somehow when you get back home, like they just know how to poke you. All of a sudden you're here raging against the machine, exploding all over the place, starting fights and getting into screaming matches and all of these things. Um, Things that you thought that you'd outgrown, that you really sort of recovered from, and then now here you are, right? And it can also just be really tiring planning the trip and, cooking for all these people and being social and the whole shebang. It isn't this hallmark moment that everyone thinks that it is. There is a lot that goes into it that is really tiring and really draining, and being back home, being with family can recharge you in many ways, but it can also drain you in many ways. And all I can really say is be kind to yourself. Be kind and gracious with yourself. Um, This is not an easy time of year to be in. You are not only being confronted with, all your triggers, your fundamental, base triggers, but it's also coming to you at a time of year where you're exhausted, right? You don't have that much left in the tank. And as much as you're happy to see everyone, you know, you're not necessarily your best self. Like this time of year genuinely is a trap. And there's a lot of financial pressure as well. And all these things, are climbing on top of you while you also have this pressure to also have a good time. You know what I mean? So, one, if you are going back home, I think it is a great time to see how far you've come. Like, even if you do find yourself reverting back to an older version of yourself, that you at least are able to recognize the difference between these two versions of yourself, right? That the fact that there is so much of a switch is a good thing, low key, maybe. You know what I mean? And like, yes, you do need to work on, like, freeing yourself from that sort of dynamic. And that's something that you can work on. But regardless of that dynamic, you still have this, you know, this reminder, I guess, um, that like, wow, this is how I used to be, you know? So shout out to me. Shout out to me for growing, right? Because the real me, the one that's walking around this earth every day, not the me that is in this pressure cooker, at the end of a very long year, the real me who's out in the streets is nothing like this. The real me who's sitting and watching myself act like a fool is nothing like this. And shout out to me for growing, because there are many people who go back home and they don't notice any change, right? For them, they just see the people around them as being problematic, but they're not noticing themselves revert back to, a version of themselves that they would rather not be, that they're not their best selves, right? And maybe we eat too much, maybe you drink too much, maybe you just overindulge. And that's fine. And that usually in the year that you have a lot more restraint and control and all of these things, and that is okay. I'm not saying that the festive season is carte blanche to just, be reckless and be an asshole and all of these things. But I do think that it's important that you acknowledge all the different stresses that go into this time of year. Um, and that to sort of lead with grace, lead with kindness, um, be understanding, that this very situation, this very dynamic that you've walked into, um, is the source of many of the things that you're trying to unlearn and heal from. So, how you choose to survive that period of time, is entirely up to you. And be gracious with yourself as you are trying to survive. You know what I mean? As you're trying to just get through a situation, be gracious with yourself. For those of us who spend Christmas alone, I've spent many a Christmas alone. Don't shy away from having a joyous time by yourself. I know it can be hard. I know some of my friends, like friends in Joburg, have had like a friends miss, and that's really nice. But one thing that I did one of the years where I was having Christmas alone, that year my budget allowed. I don't even know how that happened, but it did. So I made little packages, little meal packages, and I just handed it out to homeless people, in my area. And that's what I did. I spent my Christmas, making little goodie bags um, for homeless people, and that was lovely. Like I just spent the morning doing that, and I spent the rest of the day by myself. But for me, that was a joyous thing to do, that, like, in the spirit of Christmas, right? That I was able to at least share some joy, just, help someone else's Christmas be a little bit brighter. And that for me was enough that year. There are many places where you can volunteer. Um, Maybe even, like, if you are religious or whatever, attend a church service or do whatever if you don't want to be alone, right? That there are little things that you can do where you might still spend a portion of your day alone, but you don't have to spend the whole day alone. I would just like to encourage you to, like, not commit to the misery of it all, right? That sometimes, because we're just like, oh, I'm spending the day alone and I'm such a sad sack and all of that, that we rob ourselves of the opportunity to connect with people still. That just because maybe we don't have a tight knit group of people that we can, say that these are my Christmas niggas, you know what I mean? These are the bitches that I spend Christmas with. Um, but it doesn't mean that there are no bitches for you to spend Christmas with, even if it is for a few hours, right? Um, so yeah, put yourself out there, um, and just be surrounded by people. If there are Christmas carols, go find out where the carols are, and stand in the crowd and sing along and feel connected without actually having to connect. you know but there are little things that you can do, and if you do want to be by yourself, then sure, but then anticipate what the day could bring up. And even for people who are going to be spending the Christmas with family, you know I think a good thing to do is to anticipate certain triggers, certain things that might, um, upset you, certain things that might be difficult for you to deal with. Identify those things in advance and, create strategies for yourself to then work around those things, to get through those things, right? If you know that you're going to, like, if you spend the whole day alone, that you're just going to want to drink, and that's going to make you even more depressed. And it's just going to end up being a terrible day, and you don't maybe feel safe with your thoughts. Then say that early on. Say that, if you don't have friends or family that you can say that to, then, there are hotlines that you can look up and call. You can go to, like I said, local churches, whatever, but there are spaces for you to go to. There are many like Christmassy type events, um, for people who are spending Christmas alone. I think the sad thing about the world of capitalism, right, is that it encourages us to self-isolate, even though that is not our natural state of being. And then afterwards, it sells us the solution for the misery that comes with self isolation. But yeah, if you've chosen to cut contact with your family, and it's not that there's no one there, but you are choosing not to spend time with them, for your own mental health, give yourself time to also grieve those relationships. That even though it, may be the best decision for you, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be happy about that decision. So make time in the day to grieve that relationship, and maybe even spend some time writing letters to every person that, you miss, every person that you wish you didn't have to cut contact with, and speak to how you wish they were better, right? Or speak about the things that you liked about them, right? That in spite of you needing to cut contact because on the whole they're shit, right? But they had their moments, they had potential to be good people. And they fucked it up. And if that makes you even more sad, then don't do that. But you know what I mean? Preempt whatever you need to preempt, and create a strategy around that, so that you too can have a good Christmas. That it doesn't have to be a day that you write off entirely, um, because you're just, there's no way you can have a good day. It doesn't have to be, a blast of a day, one for the books, but it doesn't have to be a bad day either. So that's it. I'm going to keep it kort and bondig, as the Afrikaners will say, because I don't want to chew your ears off. I just want you to know that I'm I'm in the corner of your circle. I I care that you are able to celebrate if you want to celebrate, but that if anything, you're able to just enjoy your life. This is a tough time of year. Many people struggle to get through the season because there are many things, especially things like finances and being reminded of, all that you have lost. But there's also so much more to gain, and there's money to be made, one way or another. Um, just celebrate yourself in the best way that you know how, even if it does mean allowing yourself the day to rest. For people who work in service jobs where, Christmas time is the busiest time of year for you and it's very intense, give yourself room to rest, to sleep. That can be your gift to yourself, is rest. My gift to myself this year is a skirt that I never in a million years would have bought because of my fupa, and I feel like, I need to hide my fupa. So I usually buy like A-line skirts, where it just holds you at the waist and kind of tapers outward so that it just all covers whatever's happening. But, as time has gone by, I've kind of realized that that shape just makes me look bigger, you know what I mean? Looks like I'm dragging a tent around. So yeah, I took a risk. And I got a skirt. It was really cheap. Um, but it was more so about the shape and the silhouette of it. And I don't know how it's going to sit on my body. And I also then topped that off because it was so cheap. I had, a bit of money left over. And girl math. So I decided to get a little crop top as well. And yeah, I haven't worn them and I'm choosing not to wear them. I'm saving them for my solo Christmas, where I will spend the morning, I don't want to spend the day hating my body, right? But I do want to spend the morning like just figuring out how I can make the skirt and the top work. They don't have to work together, but I want to see how I can incorporate it into my wardrobe. And I want to spend the day, as an exercise on, you know, potential bravery down the line. You know what I mean? Um, that this will be a skirt that will, I'll be used to having in my rotation, and that eventually I will graduate from, maybe wearing the skirt with like a longer top to still hide my fupa, to then eventually, wearing tops that are a little bit shorter and shorter and shorter, to maybe one day wearing said skirt with the aforementioned crop top. Who knows? Who knows? But that's how I'm choosing to spend my Christmas. Because I like a bit of a challenge. I like a bit of an adventure. I'm on leave for almost a month, actually. And sometimes I feel like when I'm off work, right, and, like I just come to a grinding halt, work is so intense and it's fast paced and it's just pressure, 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 and then boom, it stops. And even though there's a bit of admin I need to do here and there, like it's not as intense. And I often tend to give myself projects and things to do to keep my hands and my mind busy, because I I kind of maybe am afraid of, lingering in my thoughts for too long, because that's when I get really depressed and it's just, I don't go outside. And I don't think that I have an issue with my thoughts. I'm always in my head thinking, but I think it's because I don't have any sort of routines that revolve around just me and the things that I like to do. Um, so that's when then I start to get depressed, because then I'm not going outside, I'm not seeing the sun, I'm not doing anything exciting. Um, so yeah, my aim for this whole month has been to try and give myself a bit of an adventure, just try and figure out a routine for myself so that for the coming year, come rain or shine, whether I am at work or not at work, right? If I'm on leave or busy, either way, that these are the little routines and habits that I have, cultivated for myself so that I can always maintain a certain level of like mental health and wellness. And that's something that I struggle with a lot. So yeah, that aside, my Christmas gift is, a little body positivity challenge, I guess. And yeah, you can also just save a little, task or project for yourself for Christmas. If you want something low key, you can communicate that and just give it a try. Like with last week's episode, I was talking about trusting yourself. Trust yourself enough, to survive whatever response you get, but make the request. Make the request known that, like, hi guys, I don't like it when you make these jokes about me. I don't like it when, this and this happens. Could you please accommodate me in these ways? They could say no, right? And that's fine. But you never know the power of making that request, that maybe someone else has also been struggling with the same dynamic in the family, in the group, and hasn't had the courage to say it. But by you saying it out loud, you might find that there are more and more people who join in and say, yeah, actually, I don't like it either. I just participate because I don't feel like I have a choice. But if we're being honest, I don't like it. And you might be able to even change certain family traditions and make the home space a little more, survivable, a little more comfortable, a little less shit. So, yeah, that's me. And I hope you have a wonderful Christmas, a merry, merry Christmas. And if it's not merry, I hope you have an adequate Christmas. But most of all, I hope you don't have a shit one. I will see you next time. Remember, next week is our last episode for the season, and then we'll have a sabbatical. I will announce next week when we will return, but in the interim, you will still have the Agony Aunt episodes. Those are not stopping, only because I have pre-recorded. I think I've passed 10. Last week I said I was up to episode 10. I've passed that point. I'm not sure where I am now. But yeah, I really like pre-recording the episodes because obviously life gets busy and I want to be consistent. My challenge for this podcast in the first place was to be consistent. And yeah, I want to stick with that. But, I don't want this podcast to also then become the whip that I, beat myself with. So rest is just as important as, everything else. So yeah, I will see you next week. Goodbye. Alrighty. Now that we've got all that festive shit out of the way, let's discuss next week. Okay? Let's discuss next week. Next week, obviously, it's New Year's. We're going to talk about goal setting, rah, 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 rah. And it's not going to be like a boring ass, episode talking about making smart goals. I'm not about that life. But yeah, I will be talking about making vision boards and just, looking at the year ahead. What are we hopeful for? What do we hope to improve on? What are our goals? What's the 5-year plan, and how does this year fit into that 5-year plan? If there is a 5-year plan. If there isn't, why isn't there one? Come on. But yeah, that's what we'll be talking about next week. And I think it'll be a great one to end the season off on, just to sort of like look ahead and, run off into the distance, hoping to reach our goal. So yeah, that's it for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you next time. Bye.